Do you ever find yourself freezing when someone raises their voice? Or maybe you apologise constantly, even when you've done nothing wrong. Perhaps you feel this deep, gnawing sense that you're fundamentally unworthy of love no matter how much evidence suggests otherwise. These aren't just quirks of your personality, they might be whispers from a childhood that was far from safe. The truth is, abuse in childhood doesn't always look like what we see in movies. It's not always visible bruises or locked doors. Sometimes it's the absence of what should have been there, the comfort that never came, the validation that was withheld, the love that was conditional, weaponized, or simply non-existent. And the hardest part? Many of us carry these wounds into adulthood without even realizing they're there. We've normalized the abnormal. We've learned to survive in a war zone and then wondered why we can't relax when the war is over. Today we're going to explore 7 signs that shows your childhood was marked by toxic parenting. 7 patterns that might be quietly sabotaging your present. This isn't about blame, this is about recognition, because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. So take a breath, this might be difficult, but you're not alone. And more importantly, you're finally ready to see the truth. Let's start with something that might feel achingly familiar. Do you find yourself having emotional reactions that feel disproportionate to the situation? Someone makes a small criticism at work and suddenly you're spiraling into a full-blown panic. A friend cancels plans and you're consumed with rage or a crushing sadness that you can't quite explain. This is what happens when you grow up in an environment where emotions rend safe to express, where your feelings were dismissed, mocked, or met with punishment. Your parents might have told you to stop crying or you'd be given something to cry about. They might have shut down your anger, your fear, your sadness, anything that inconvenienced them or challenged their narrative. So you learned to suppress. You stuffed everything down into this internal pressure cooker. And now, as an adult, that valve doesn't work properly anymore. Tiny triggers release cataclysmic amounts of stored emotional energy, simply because you never learned how to process these feelings in real time. Healthy emotional regulation is taught through co-regulation. In childhood, a child feels scared, and the parent soothes them down, helping them understand that these feelings will pass, that they're safe. But if you were dismissed, shamed, or ignored when you were upset, you never had the chance to internalize that perspective. Your nervous system is still stuck in survival mode, oscillating between numbness and overwhelm. This isn't a weakness. This is what trauma does to a developing brain. Here's a question. Have you ever walked into a room where you can immediately sense the emotional temperature? Do you scan faces for signs of displeasure, irritation, or anger? Are you constantly monitoring others, always trying to predict what they need or want before they even ask? This is hypervigilance, and it's a survival mechanism you learn to develop growing as a child. When you grow up with a toxic parents, especially the reactive, unpredictable, or the emotionally volatile kind, you learn very quickly that your safety depends on your ability to read the room. You become a tiny emotional detective, analysing every micro-expression, every shift in tone, every sigh or silence. Because if you could predict the storm just well enough, maybe you could prevent it, or at least brace yourself for impact. Maybe your parent was a reactor, that is, someone whose mood could shift in an instant, turning ordinary moments into emergencies. You needed new shoes for school, but was met with an explosive burst of anger. You wanted to talk about being bullied in school. They made it about them, about how hard their life was, about why you were such a burden. So you learned. You adapted to their emotional volatility at the expense of your own. You developed this exquisite sensitivity to danger, this internal radar that's still running in the background of your adult mind, scanning for threats that do not even exist anymore. The cruel irony is that this skill, this hypervigilance that helped you survive, now exhausts you, but you can't turn it off. You're constantly bracing for impact, even in safe relationships, which makes it almost impossible to relax, to trust, to simply be. Do you feel responsible for other people's emotions? Do you believe that if someone is upset, it's somehow your job to fix it? Do you carry some sense of guilt for things that aren't even your fault, things you couldn't possibly control? This is what happens when you're raised by a toxic parent who blames you for their own problems. You ruined my life. I could be something more if I didn't have to raise you. Everything was fine until you came along. These are the kinds of soul-crushing messages that children of toxic parents internalize. And the child, whose brain is still developing, whose understanding of causality is limited, believes it. They take on a burden that was never theirs to carry too early. This distorted sense of responsibility manifests in adulthood in insidious ways. You might find yourself apologizing constantly, even when you've done nothing wrong. You might find yourself taking on other people's emotional labor, believing it's your duty to manage everyone's feelings. You might stay in toxic relationships far longer than you should because you feel responsible for the other person's happiness or stability. Here's the truth. You were never responsible for your parents' unhappiness, their failures, their disappointments, their rage. None of that was any of your fault. You were a child. You deserve protection, not blame. You deserve to be seen as a gift, not a burden. But they made you the easy target for everything they couldn't face in themselves. And you believed them because children almost always believe anything their parents say. That's how attachment works. That's how survival works. But it's high time to put down that weight. It was never yours to carry in the first place. Now let's talk about relationships. Do you find it difficult to let other people in? Do you push people away when they get too close? Or perhaps the opposite? Do you cling desperately to relationships, terrified of abandonment and willing to tolerate maltreatment just to avoid being alone? This is the legacy of an inconsistent conditional love in childhood. At the time, your parents were emotionally unavailable and neglectful, where they only showed you affection when you performed or behaved in ways that pleases them. You learned a devastating lesson. That love isn't safe. That connection isn't guaranteed. That people leave. Maybe you had what I call the I just work here parent, the one who was physically present but emotionally absent, the one who treated you like an inconvenience, the one who wouldn't be bothered in knowing your teacher's name or your friends or anything about your inner world. Yes, they provided the basics, food, shelter, but withheld the one thing you needed the most, presence, care, and affection. And now as an adult, you're caught up in this terrible bind. You desperately crave connection, but you're terrified of it. You long to be seen, known, and understood, but you can't believe that anyone would truly stay if they saw all of you. And so you either avoid intimacy altogether, keeping people at arm's length, or pursue it with a frantic intensity that often drives people away. This is what psychologists call disorganized attachment, and it's one of the most painful legacies of childhood trauma. It's the simultaneous belief that you need people and that they will hurt you. Come closer, go away. I love you, please don't leave me, but I can't trust you, so I have to push you away first. Healing this requires learning, slowly, painstaking learning that not everyone is your parent, that a safe relationship does exist, that you are, in fact, worthy of a consistent, unconditional love. Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the voice in your head. What does it say to you whenever you make a mistake? Whenever you fall short of your own expectations? Whenever you look into the mirror? Is it kind, compassionate, understanding? Or does it sound cruel? Relentless, unforgiving? For the many survivors of toxic parenting, this inner critic is vicious. It's the internalized voice of the parent who was hypercritical, never satisfied, always demanding. That parent who looked at your 90% and asked why it wasn't a 100%. The one who looked at your 100% and said, "You got lucky." The one who made you feel like you were never good enough, never smart enough, never worthy of pride or praise. This is how shame takes root, not through a single moment, but through 1,000 small cuts, 1,000 messages that you are defective, inadequate, fundamentally flawed. And the child internalizes these messages. They internalize this criticism, and it becomes the lens through which they see themselves, that even when the parent is no longer around, their voice still remains, echoing at the back of your mind, sabotaging you of every effort, every dream, every moment of potential joy. By external measures, you might be incredibly successful, accomplished, capable, admired, but none of it ever feels like enough, because that inner critic won't let you rest. It keeps moving the goalpost every time you get closer. It tells you that you're a fraud, that you don't deserve your success, that people would reject you if they really knew you. This isn't your voice, this is the voice of your trauma, and you don't have to listen to it anymore. Here's a question that might hit hard. Were you the parent in your family? Did you have to take care of your parents' emotional needs? Did they confide in you about adult problems, their marriage, their finances, their emotional pain, when you were far too young to handle that kind of responsibility? Did you have to take care of your siblings because your parent couldn't or wouldn't? Did you become the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who held everything together? This is what psychologists call emotional parentification, and it's a subtle but devastating form of abuse. Children are not meant to be parents. Their brains are not developed enough to handle the weight of adult responsibilities and emotions. They need to be children. To play, to explore, to make mistakes, to be protected and guided. But in toxic families, the reverse is the case. The child becomes the caregiver. They learn to suppress their own needs and attune entirely to the needs of others. They end up becoming anxious, hyper-responsive, and prematurely mature. And here's the cruel part. Often, these children are praised for being so mature, so responsible, such a helper. But underneath that Praise is a profound neglect, because while they're busy taking care of everyone else, no one is taking care of them. In adulthood, parentified children often end up becoming people pleasers. They gravitate toward relationships where they're needed, where they can play the caretaker role, because that's the only way they know how to secure attachment. They give and give and give, but they end up struggling to receive. They don't know how to ask for help. They don't believe that their own needs also matters. You deserve to be a child. You deserve to be cared for, not the one doing the caring. Let's end here with something that spans across nearly every area of life: boundaries. Do you struggle to say no? Do you let people overstep, invade your space, demand your time and energy even when it depletes you? Do you feel guilty when you try to advocate for yourself? Do you question whether your boundaries are even valid? This is what happens when you grow up with parents who ignore your boundaries, or worse, punished you for having them. Maybe your parent barged into your room without knocking. Maybe they read your diary, went through your phone, demanded access to every corner of your life just because I'm your parent, so I have the right. Maybe they guilted you into compliance, making you feel selfish or ungrateful whenever you tried to assert your needs. You learned that boundaries are dangerous, that saying no leads to punishment, rejection, or overwhelming guilt. So you learned to be accommodating, flexible, agreeable, even at your own expense. But here's the truth: having boundaries doesn't make you selfish. They're essential. They're how you protect your energy, your peace, your sense of self. They're how you communicate what's acceptable and what's not. And any relationship, romantic, familial, or professional, that can't respect your boundaries is never a relationship worth having. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect yourself. And if someone tries to make you feel guilty for doing so, that's a sign that they're toxic, not that your boundaries are wrong. So here you have it. 7 signs, 7 patterns, 7 ways that the effects of a toxic parenting might still be shaping your life. If you recognized yourself in any of these signs, I want you to understand something. This isn't your fault. You were a child. You deserved safety, love, compassion, and respect. And if you didn't receive these, it's not because you were unworthy. It's because your parents were wounded, limited, or toxic in ways they may never fully understand or acknowledge. But here's the enlightening part. You don't need them to change for you to heal. You don't need their apology, their acknowledgement, their validation. You can work this out on your own. You can learn to reparent yourself, to offer yourself the compassion, the safety, the unconditional love that you never received. Healing is possible. Yes, it's hard, it's painful. It requires you to face things you've spent a lifetime avoiding. But on the other side of that pain is freedom, peace. A life where you're no longer controlled by the past. You're not broken. You're not damaged beyond repair. You are a survivor, and you have the power to rewrite your story. As the writer Susan Forward once said, you can forgive toxic parents, but do it at the conclusion of your emotional house cleaning, not at the beginning. So start where you are, acknowledge the truth, feel the grief, the anger, the sadness, and then slowly begin to build the life you deserved all along. You're not alone in this, and you're finally ready to heal. And if this resonates with you, try sharing to a friend who needs to hear. Till next time.